Good evening. I would like to call to order this regular meeting of the Metropolitan School District of Washington Township Board of Education on Wednesday, January 25th, 2012. Please let the record show that all 5 board members are present this evening. And with that, Dr. Milliman, would you mind leading us in the pledge this evening?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Milliman. We move to the approval of the consent agenda. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you, President Deswater, members of the school board. I recommend that you approve the consent agenda for this meeting, which includes the minutes and records of the January 11th, 2012 regular meeting, the January 21st, 2012 memorandum of study special session, and the January 21st, 2012 memorandum of executive session. We do not have a claims docket for this evening. The HR report includes certified personnel with 2 new appointments number 65 through 66, 1 resignation, number 7, and the classified personnel report includes 4 new hires. Those are hires numbers 93 through 96, 2 resignations, number 38 through 39, and an addendum to the certified personnel report, including 1 new appointment, which is appointment number 67. We do not have any non-competitive grants, gifts, or donations to present to you tonight.
Mr. President, if there are no questions from the board, I would move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented by Dr. Woodson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, board? Mr. Licata, I'm just assuming that no claims reports for the first 2 meetings of the year means we're going to have a nice big one once the year-end books are closed out? Yeah, okay. Looking forward to that in February. Any other questions of discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The consent agenda is approved unanimously. With that, we move to superintendent's announcements. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you. Joining us up here tonight is Cindy Stout. She is the administrative assistant for Dr. Milliman. And as a part of building our leadership capacity, we did not have a second place for Cheryl Sutton. I know she's irreplaceable. But I felt most comfortable having someone else trained to do what she does, especially for the board meetings. So she's been working behind the scenes to build capacity with her so that in the event that she may want to take a vacation, she can do so and know that there's someone else in place to continue the business of the school district. So she's joining us tonight to learn from Cheryl at the actual board meeting, and we've done some work prior to tonight as well. So we welcome her up here. We also have a huge celebration. Our J. Everett Light Career Center has standards just like all of our schools do. We talk about the criteria for our schools and adequate yearly progress for our schools. It's called something different at our Career Center. They have what's called core indicators, and those core indicators are developed with their school improvement team. They're reflective in their school improvement plan, and they are also the basis for many of their funding sources. They just got information about their achievement towards their core indicators, and they have met 100% of their core indicators, one of only 3 career centers statewide to reach 100% of those core indicators. So we are very, very proud of the work and accomplishments at our Career Center. Our boys basketball, since we last met, are now county champs, and it was a wonderful, fantastic basketball game. We're very proud of them. We are continuing our discussion on student hours and invite any stakeholder who would like to give input to details on our website, but also an opportunity to continue to give input next week, February 1st, for our next advisory council meeting, which is at Fox Hill at 6:30. We're going to look at the 13-14 calendar, as well as continued conversations about student hours, and we hope to also build in a piece about International Baccalaureate as well. This is the last advisory council before we project that it will come to the board for a vote by recommendation from administration. So certainly it's not the February 1st. After February 1st, there's still avenues for input, but we wanted to make sure all stakeholders knew about that date. And this is a fun week. I always look forward to Junior Spec. It begins tomorrow, and I'll be at the 4 o'clock show, and it is never short of laughs and always a good time and display of our students' talents and humors. So I look forward to that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson. Now is the time we have set aside in our agenda to hear from members of the public who would like to address the board on general items of interest to the board. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak this evening? Hearing none, we will move on to our action items. First item is approval of the recommendation to withdraw a CIESC membership. Mr. Licata.
Mr. Zamora, members of the board, Dr. Woodson, excuse me. At the last meeting, we presented information showing what the estimated savings were from being a member of the Central Indiana Educational Service Center and the variety of services they provide and how much of those services the district took advantage of. Based on that analysis, we determined that the savings for the district through our membership with the Service Center was pretty minimal for a year's time, and that is why I submitted a recommendation to Dr. Woodson on January 20th that we go through a formal withdrawal process with our membership at the Service Center. It is a 16-month process. If we submit our withdrawal notice by March 1st, then we would be completely withdrawn from the Service Center effective June 30th of 2013. And then that was my recommendation to Dr. Woodson. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Licata. Mr. Kite.
I think just one question, Mr. Licata. I appreciate your pointing out the savings to the district. Obviously, that's a huge issue, and every member of this board has previously thanked you for your continued vigilance and looking for ways to save money from funky things like E-rate stuff and everything else. So this is just one more example. My question has to do with the what we hear a lot in the state of Indiana from our governor is about the savings of pulling together resources that school districts and others can purchase. And I know you've pointed out that there's an awful lot, or there's some of what is provided by CIESC that is still available to non-members. Is the lion's share of what we might purchase either available to non-members, or it's something that we can find on an equal footing as an individual school district anyway?
It is. We would not be able to continue to take advantage of any of the cooperative bids that the Service Center advertises for their membership, but we would do our own bidding, and we've explored the possibility of already talking with some other districts if we felt we weren't going to be competitive enough on our own to combine our bidding volume, if you will, depending on whether it's pints of milk or bread or school buses or what have you, combine that volume with other districts, and we're very confident that our pricing would be extremely competitive with what the Service Center receives on their bids. And in some instances, we've actually used Service Center bids as a starting point to negotiate lower pricing from some vendors and been successful doing that also.
Mr. Turner?
Yes, Mr. Licata. Yes, Mr. Licata. I know in the last meeting you talked about your recommendation that you're going to bring to the board for us to talk about it tonight. And along with Mr. Kite's question, you don't see the CIESE is not a requirement, so school districts do not have to belong, correct?
That is correct.
So if you don't belong, just like you just mentioned a minute ago, that you can still do cooperative buying with other districts and still try to receive a reduced rate. So this is not a requirement. We don't have to be a member. This is just something we've done in the past.
That's correct.
Okay.
If we were to work with other districts, we would just, share the cost, or you pay for the public notice and putting the specs together this year. We'll pay for it next year, and that's fairly inexpensive to just place an ad in the newspaper, your public notification that you're soliciting bids for a particular line of products, and then the interested vendors would contact us, and we just send them the specifications and the estimated quantities or volume of anticipated purchases, and then they would submit a bid to us by a particular date, similar to what we do with any other public bidding process. We also do belong to some other cooperative purchasing groups. We belong to U.S. Communities, which already has predetermined bid prices with a variety of vendors for different goods and services. We use Hospital Purchasing Association. which I think Mr. Smith gets some products through his division, through that purchasing co-op. So there's other co-ops out there that we do take advantage of, and the membership is either not a fee to belong to them, or it's very minimal in the hundreds of dollars a year versus tens of thousands.
The other piece, obviously, purchasing is a large portion of your potential savings through CISC. We have not seen that savings, thus the recommendation, but there's also other services that CISC provides. We don't particularly use those services. For instance, they do offer professional development services. We don't use those in Washington Township because it's not in alignment with the direction and vision of our district. So they don't offer any international baccalaureate training. So we don't want to send our teachers over there for an additional something, whether we really want them to receive the personalized training for what we're asking them to do in classrooms every day. So they do offer other services, but we don't use those services as well.
And some of those other services are not free of charge. They do charge for professional development when they provide it, that you sign up and pay so much per person to attend, just like we do many other workshop activities.
Any other questions, Board? Mr. Licata, thank you for providing the analysis and answering the questions for us, both last meeting and this. Board, I'd entertain a motion if we're done with discussion.
If there are no further questions, Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation to withdraw from CIESC membership as presented by Mr. Licata.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please.
Any comments first?
Any comments or discussion?
Just one real quick comment, Mr. President. I just wanted to, obviously, there are two. I want to thank Mr. Licata for his work on this, and also Dr. Woodson for a recommendation. I do want to point out that this is, at least all I can do is speak for myself. This is not any kind of denunciation of the CIESC. No. It's cost savings, and it's an adjustment, or it's an adjustment based upon where we, as I see it, just me, in my opinion, that's an adjustment of where we are now, and we've had superintendents who spent time on the board of CIESC. We've had different people choose to invest their time in different ways. The district, it may have been beneficial before and not as now. So I just have appreciated, obviously, what the group has done for us in the past.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to withdraw, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Licata. We move on to approval of the district's strategic plan. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you, President Deswater, members of the school board. I would like to submit to you tonight the 2012 through 2015 strategic plan for Washington Township for your approval. We've been working the last 6 months on this plan, gathering broad-based stakeholder input and doing a wealth of analysis of that input and turning those into goals for the strategic plan. You have the strategic plan for approval tonight. That document will be supported with a very comprehensive action plan, which is a detail of how we will achieve those goals in the district. That is a working document. We do maintain that the goals will remain the same unless we present something to you to approve a change of those goals over the next 3 years, but the action plan document that's supplemental will be a working document that our division leaders will lead from.
Mr. Kite.
Just one question, just for kind of the good of the order and the members of the public who are listening. We will, I assume, as a board, be able to see the document that underlies the larger document strategic plan.
Absolutely.
I know it's a working document, but just so we can continue to know kind of the minutia of what's going on.
Absolutely.
The important minutia.
And I do plan, currently we have schools giving us quarterly updates on our quality assurance process. We plan to do the exact same process with our strategic plan, having periodic updates to the board on our progress with our strategic plan as well.
If there are no other questions, Mr. President, I would move that the board grants approval of the district strategic plan as presented by Dr. Woodson.
We have a motion, and we have a very quiet second. Thank you. I thought I was listening, and I could not hear it. And I actually did have one more question, so I'll ask a question before I ask for any comment. Dr. Woodson, I don't know if you have thought about it yet, but certainly when the action plan items of the strategic plan are being reported to the board, those documents will appear on that section of the district website. I don't know if you or staff had thought about having a separate section of the website where it might be a little easier to find.
Absolutely.
Buried under board meeting dates.
So our communications team has been working the past month on, okay, so we're going to have a strategic plan come February. How do we deploy that to stakeholders in a way that's meaningful to that stakeholder group? So what we share with teachers about our strategic plan needs to look different than what we share with parents about our strategic plan. So we're working on communication modes to broad-based stakeholders on this. That obviously turns into application for our website, but as well as communicating out to the broader stakeholder groups this spring. We are also looking at, we know not everyone doesn't want to read a 16-page document to get the focus of the district. I get that. Businesses get that. So we've learned from business, many of which who have created a graphic to display their focus of their strategic plan. We have our JEL graphic design department working on that along with our communications team. So we have some things in the works to try to simplify this, so we're not saying here's our strategic plan, here's all 16 pages, but some more key, concise messages for different stakeholder groups as appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson. Any other comments or discussion about the strategic plan, board? Mr. Kite? Yes.
I wanted to thank Dr. Woodson and staff. The work on this has been incredible, and it's obviously already a very busy time.
It has been a team effort. It really has.
Hear, hear. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to adopt the strategic plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. And we move on to our final action item of the evening, approval of the agreement with the student, with regard to the student tracker and the IUPUI grant-funded project. Dr. Milliman.
Good evening, President Zwaner, members of the board, Dr. Woodson. Before you is a proposal to approve an agreement to participate with the Student Clearinghouse, which is run by, again, a student tracker through the Student Clearinghouse. This particular organization is a not-for-profit organization comprised of over 3,300 colleges and universities across the country. Originally, this particular group provided information primarily to departments of education and student loan holders, if you will, because, as you know, the student loan process to repay begins when students leave the university, not necessarily if or when they graduate from the university. So this organization helped in that regard. What it's evolved into is an organization that assists secondary institutions in tracking their students' progress into college and through college. And speaking as a former high school principal, I can tell you how difficult that is once they leave your doors to find out exactly what happened to all of those graduates. And this particular process, because it's tied into about 98% of the post-secondary institutions nationwide, you can find out whether students have transferred to a 2-year to a 4-year, from a public to a private, whether they finished their degree in 4 years or 6 years, and you can find out a lot of good longitudinal data about your students. This is something that's kind of caught on in recent years with secondary institutions, and we were approached by IUPUI, which was awarded a grant to do this in Marion County. So most of the Marion County districts and high schools are participating in this. I don't have a comprehensive list to tell you which ones are, which ones not, but I'm on the email list, and it's pretty much everybody in Marion County. And their work is to track, if you will, the success of various demographics within Marion County. So their expertise and research then will help us directly, and if we participate as part of the grant, then IUPUI's grant will pick up the $450 annual cost for the next 2 years that we would have paid out of our own pocket if we would have chose to do this on our own. So through this process as well, IUPUI has negotiated with Student Tracker that we could add, and I don't propose that we do this, but we could add as many as 100 additional fields when we're tracking students through the university process. But for us, again, 100's a lot. But we could track our athletes. We can track our AVID students, perhaps. We can track our IB students. We can track. There's many categories that we could add through this process and provide meaningful data. I did pull all of the secondary administrators and guidance counselors together, and they see value in this. Our technology department already manipulates this type of data, so it wasn't an extraordinary task for them to participate. So I think everyone sees the value in this particular agreement. We did go over the contract through Mr. Licata's eyes and Mr. Rubright's eyes, etc. They did verify. I did get a written letter, from their DC office verifying that they are E-Verify compliant organization, and it is FERPA compliant. So when we load any student data, they are FERPA compliant. So there won't be any personal information shared with private industries, etc. Students' names won't be sold or traded, things like that. So those are the things that we did on our end to vet this process, and I'd entertain any questions you might have.
Dr. Milliman? Mrs. Spainrati?
What part of IUPUI is doing this? Is it field education, or is it
Yeah, it's Office of Information Management and Institutional Research, but it is also, they're lending support in the School of Education. Actually, it's functioning, I believe, in large part as a doctoral study for one of their graduate students who did come and present this to the high school group when we met.
Mr. Turner?
Just kind of reading through the information here, and it's saying that, so let's say, for example, we do become a member of this process. After you plug in the student information, when does the data start to collect? I mean, what are you collecting on it?
Yeah,
how long do you have to wait to get?
Sure. The initial upload, they would like to have at least 3 years of data, for obvious reasons, of students to be progressing through the university process. And that's an excellent question. Really, to get any trend data, you're talking 4 to 6 years minimum. I believe that as Mr. Brannigan and his team begin to see some of the value in this data, I mean, we're early in the process, that if this grant runs out, that for $450 with the number of graduates that we have, I can see it as something that we would pick up and continue over time. So the initial upload of data won't have as many fields probably because we didn't know that we needed to store that. So as we're part of this process, we will begin to archive that a little differently, and then I'd say 4 to 6 years we start seeing some meaningful trends.
Okay, that's what. Thank you.
Mr. Kite?
I thought long and hard about asking this question, but I decided to ask it, or to emphasize something. And I don't want to besmirch the good name of Old National Bank or Visa publicly, but as someone who's now had his bank card canceled 4 times because of a breach of the Visa database, a concern for me on this, and it's not, I don't think, just because I'm getting older, but and I do order things over the internet. I don't live in a small hut down by the river.
Right.
But you know, I was very concerned about the security aspect, and FERPA is one thing, but you know, I liked the answer to the frequently asked questions number 8, and I hardly ever read something out loud or make anybody suffer through that. But it mentions the clearinghouse using secure computer systems and transmission protocols, encrypted files, and operational safeguards, and taking proactive measures to limit the risk of loss or stolen data. The last sentence sounds very generic, but hearing about things like encrypted files, and then also that you're looking, and the district's looking very carefully at exactly what information is included, and you're not going to fill in all 100 fields because you can.
Right, that's correct. And we've asked questions to IUPUI as well about the anonymous nature of the data, and are comfortable with that. You know, I think the good news in this is that this is not. This particular organization has been in existence for quite some time, with literally millions of pieces of data probably mine as well, with a student loan info out there somewhere, that if 98% of the universities, to say there's never been a hiccup, I have no idea. I don't work for them, but it's a pretty strong track record, I think, of security.
Is this information, though, you know about FERPA, is this, I assume, and maybe I shouldn't, that this also doesn't go to military recruiters? I know it's been an issue with North Central information in the past.
Right. Other than, I can't answer that other than to make an assumption that not other than what they would be required to do by some type of statute or law. So,
Dr. Milliman, my question is a very small one. As I read it, I thought it was 93% of the institutions of higher education, and I was just curious to know if they share with you what that 7% or whatever the percentage is.
We did ask that question. It was interesting. I think it's probably growing.
Blind spot, to know if it's a blind spot that could impact the data, or is it really schools that we think the vast majority of our kids wouldn't end up at?
Well, I can't answer that because I don't know exactly across the country what that 6 to 7% represents. Some universities have taken upon themselves to track this information rather than contracting with this service to do that. The representative from IUPUI said that number of participants is growing because they're finding out that they are using enough internal resources and time and costs to track that information that it's not cost effective for them to do that when they can just upload the information to Student Tracker. So I think they're finding it not to their advantage to continue that practice. I think that number is growing, but at 93%, we're going to hit most of the universities in the country that our kids would attend, I think.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I read that to say the number of universities represents 93% of enrolled students, not that it's 93% of institutions.
Yeah.
But my question was just, of those that aren't participating in this, do we think, could that be small liberal arts colleges in the Midwest, for instance?
And I don't know what a university pays. I mean, it may not be the $450 at this time we're able to get reimbursed for. It could be a much larger number that they have to deal with that would cause. I would assume it would be. I think 450 would be doable in most places.
Thank you. Any other questions, Board? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would move that the Board grant its approval to the agreement with Student Tracker /IUPUI grant-funded program as presented by Dr. Milliman.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Board? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to participate in the Student Tracker and the IUPUI grant project, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Milliman.
Thank you.
With that, we move to our final agenda item for this regular meeting of the Board. Just a reminder to the public that following adjournment of our regular meeting, we will briefly break and then reconvene for a study special session this evening in the same room, at which no board action will be taken, but which we will hear and discuss division reports from the school district's divisions. 5 divisions, right?
Yes.
All right. With that, then, we move on to student hours update. Dr. Milliman, you have the microphone again.
Thank you, President Zwaner. As we have, from the outset of our advisory council meetings, continued to discuss student hours with a broad base of stakeholders in varying formats, the objective of the change in student hours has remained the same throughout this process: to address the elementary student day, that, as you know, is currently the shortest in Marion County, and to do so without added transportation expense and without a significant impact to the middle school or high school student day. We have shared 3 options so far now with stakeholders for feedback. One option adjusts the high school day slightly, but did not impact the instructional minutes, while lengthening the middle school day slightly and the elementary day significantly at over 12,000 minutes. The second option also lengthened the elementary day significantly, in this case over 7,000 minutes. Minimally impacted the middle school day, but again significantly impacted the high school day negatively at over 3,500 minutes. In this option, the high school day would begin much later and fall last in the sequence of our student day. A third option was brought to the table in the last several weeks, and in this option the elementary day was lengthened significantly as well, but less so than option 1, which was about 8,000 minutes estimating. The middle school would not be impacted, and the high school day again would lose between 1,000 and 2,000 minutes over their current schedule. We've discussed and surveyed our community on all options, and we have shared the results of these discussions and surveys at our many stakeholder meetings, including board meetings, and have shared all of our feedback on our website. Now, at some point in this process, in the process of any decision, options do have to be eliminated. And even though the second option that I just mentioned did have an advantage of aligning with some research on adolescent sleep patterns that suggests later start times for high school would be more advantageous, we did eliminate the later high school start option from consideration. We did so foremost due to the significant negative impact in instructional time. However, the feedback from many parents and administration listed other drawbacks, including child care for younger siblings and impacts on our students that represent our district in various co- and extracurricular activities. We continue to consider any potential option or various variations of our current options on a daily basis. However, we know that a decision must be made soon for two very important reasons. One, our parents in our community and child care providers in our community need to know our decision to allow for proper planning. And two, our transportation department is already behind their normal routing schedule while waiting on a decision. And we really want to keep those people around and keep them happy. They do a great job, so we need to help them out. We cannot put we can't put them in a position of scrambling to route the thousands of students we have. While slight changes may still be possible to either of the remaining two options, we plan to bring a proposal to you for approval at the February 22nd meeting. That's my update on student hours. I would entertain any questions you might have.
Mr. Peck? Not as much a question as a comment, but respectfully, and this is not trying to pick a fight at all, I think a lot of people look at board votes and they see a lot of 5-0 votes and they assume that the board's made up its mind, and I think that this whole process has been very helpful, at least to me, to once again to see the administration talking to folks at these task force meetings. I want to repeat something I said, though, Saturday at the open meeting that we had at the beginning of the day, and that is, and again, I hope you're not offended, I'm not trying to quibble over language, but really what you're saying is that the administration has eliminated bringing forward one possibility. I think, and this is not to put pressure on anybody because I have to make the same difficult choices and decisions as other board members, but we have to own the decision about not going with what, for some people, is their clearly preferable idea of having the high school day start later. Board ethics forbid us to talk about, individually about what decision we're going to make, and that can be an ongoing thought process, for everybody. I think that what you've talked about's compelling. I don't know the reasons why that's not. So this doesn't suggest that I'm exhausting myself trying to eliminate that possibility. But I'm just. So it sounds like I'm quibbling about language. But
no, perhaps I should have said that we have eliminated that option that we are considering to bring to you for consideration. Certainly, that it is ultimately your decision, and if you chose to go another direction, table the current proposal, you obviously have that discretion. But we have eliminated that at this point as an option that we will bring to you as our final proposed student hours option.
I can tell you that's not the first option we've taken off the table. there's about 12 of those that we've had to eliminate or not even take for broad-based stakeholder feedback because it costs too much or it's not possible with routing. So it's been a process over the past 6 to 8 months of kind of what we need to maybe take off the table as a better way for possible recommendations to the school board, but that the school board has not eliminated all of those options, including the one that he's talking about tonight, but we're removing it from a possible recommendation based on feedback.
Just to be very clear, I definitely appreciate, as I know other board members do, the administration's recommendations, and I think in the past, the administration's always made a significant case for its recommendations, whether 99% of the time they're accepted. Obviously, I'm just making that point because I don't want the public to get the impression that we blinked or something.
Very good.
Yep.
There's a couple other pieces. We are working collaboratively with our Teachers Association on some other thoughts and ideas based on feedback. We certainly aren't prepared tonight to share what exactly those ideas are, but as soon as we have something formulated, we will certainly share it. It may be a combination of some of the options and feedback that we've received to date. So I just wanted the board to know that we aren't holding fast. It's got to be one of these two that you physically see here. We are still morphing and changing based on all the feedback we're getting. Two, there's a lot of myths out there that I just want to share and dispel. There's been questions that the use of this extra time at the elementary level is just going to be used for I-STEP prep. They're just going to use this extra time just to prep kids for I-STEP. That's false. There's been rumor out there that we're just going to use this extra time to extend recess and extend lunch. That's false. We are not going to say that at the kindergarten and first grade we won't have some kind of different configuration for movement for students with an extended day, but we aren't going to across the board extend recess for all students, and anyone who has done elementary lunch duty would not be in favor of extending lunchtime. So we have on the plate, though, some other great exciting ideas of possibilities for this extra time. Certainly the majority of this time will be used for instructional purposes to meet state standards for those grade levels. But we are also looking at extending the special area time, which is very exciting as well, meaning depending on the model we actually go with, students could have 5 or 10 extra minutes of special area time per day. That's twofold benefit. Students are getting more world language, more art, more music, more PE with that model, but also that provides teachers additional prep time too, because when they take students to special area, that is their prep time. So we see that as a dual benefit in addition to the extra instructional time that teachers have been giving us feedback for years about that is needed at the elementary level. Historically, that time was there at the elementary here in Washington Township years ago. It changed based on the middle school transportation issue. It was not changed based on an instructional, we don't think elementary students need this long of a day, or we think it wasn't based on anything about that. It was based on transportation needs at that time in the district. So it has been there historically in the past, was taken away. We certainly see a need and are hearing from teachers very strongly for the past years that that does need to come back. The high school piece, certainly we wanted to try to align it with research as much as possible with that late sleep pattern. The majority of the high schools in Marion County and in the state of Indiana don't have that luxury of that late start time. We have been asked, why does a district neighboring us have that late start time? Let's just do their exact same times. It's not as easy as doing that. There's lots of complexities with transportation that prevent us from doing it, but that's why we did charge our transportation department with finding a possible way of looking at that late start time, but the only way it was done without a significant financial cost was at 3,600 lost instructional minutes at the high school, which is a huge concern to lots of stakeholders as we receive feedback on. So we're trying to dispel lots of myths out there as we hear of them. We have mentioned the Advisory Council several times, but I wanted to publicly state that is not the only opportunity for input. We are talking consistently and continually with our teachers through a variety of formats. We're having ongoing conversation with administrators. Dr. Milliman and I daily and nightly, are responding to parent stakeholders who are wanting to have a conversation or have a question or want to give feedback on student hours. We have an open survey on our website for parents who are unable to attend any of these meetings. Our principals are having ongoing conversations in their buildings. We're putting information in newsletters, and it has been a part of our front page on our website since November. So we continue to extend efforts. We are going to put out another piece in our all-school newsletters, or a way that they communicate with parents within the next week, as yet again another opportunity for feedback. But we do hope to bring this to you, currently scheduled in front of the board for a vote, a recommendation of specific hours on February 22nd, as we discussed in study session this past weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson, for that information. Mrs. Spainrod.
I know we're not talking about teacher hours at this particular moment, but I was wondering, irregardless to which option of these, the impact on teacher hours would still be the same no matter which one.
Correct. And I should state, currently we're bound by a teacher contract that we have in place that the board approved this past summer, and any of the student hours we're looking at fit within the current approved teacher hours. The teacher hour process is not negotiated. It's unlawful for it to be negotiated by the changes that were made this past spring. So we are in discussions through the appropriate formats with our teachers on teacher hours. We are looking at extending the current teacher day. Currently, the teachers have a 7-hour workday with a 30-minute lunch, and we are looking at extending that to meet some of the needs that have arisen in the past few years, so that we have that consistent time built in. What that looks like, we're in the exact same discussions and conversations. They just obviously aren't public for public and parent input. It's a discussion that we have with our teachers. But we are looking to extend the current teacher day regardless of student hours. That is correct.
Mr. Turner?
And you know, this might seem a little... it's not that important, but I have a question, and it's just for ease of reading. I understand why we're using minutes per year, either gained or lost, because you're looking at adding minutes to the day. But I don't know if it's a big deal to translate those minutes per year, say, regardless of what choice, into actual days that you gain, because when we look at the district, you look at 100, you know, every school has to be in school 180 days, 81 days. Then how many days are we adding to that? Just as a quick glance, because you kind of did it on the one that the administration decided maybe not bring forward to the board. But on the high school day, was shortened by 20 minutes a day, which translates into approximately 9 fewer days. That's a big deal, 9 days. Mm-hmm. So I'm just asking the question.
That's a great point of reference, and certainly may help communications, and that's easily done, easy calculation.
I'm not a good calculator, but...
Sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Milliman, I know I've been hearing some questions and comments from folks as well, and one of the questions revolves around efficiency of our transportation system.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if you could comment a little bit about what efforts we're making to make bus transportation as efficient as possible,
right.
And what some of those limitations might be.
Right.
Because
and while I would have to defer to Lynn Howard and her team if they were here on specifics of that process, anytime you're routing a district, you have to go from your farthest point of where your children reside and work back from that point. And that is difficult sometimes to translate into a very simple formula to be able to share with folks, because you might be following a bus and wonder why in the world they took a right at that light instead of a left, because the school's right over there. And there's just, again, so many complexities in this when you factor in federal mandates around choice transportation, where we have to move students, transporting, as you know, through McKinney-Vento, et cetera, long distances of students that we need to account for to get to school on time. Those are all big pieces. One of the things we hear often, too, is high school students that elect to drive or find alternate transportation to school rather than riding the bus. It's a very difficult number to estimate. Schools, including North Central and Washington Township, have attempted to do that, find that out in the spring, before they leave, or at registration, or many ways to do that. But fact of the matter is, folks change their mind, that you have move-ins that you don't anticipate. You have to route now for next year. Waiting for registration would not make sense to have to go to Mr. Licata and say, oh, oops, now we need to buy 7 more buses. And we just found that out on August 17th. It's just a hard thing to get your hands around. If there's inclement weather, all of a sudden the high school ridership goes way up because the parent says, you're not driving today. You can get on the big yellow limousine. And so we have all those factors that we have to consider. Now, we do estimate that to a degree. I mean, we don't factor in all 3,600 high school students as riders. But if you're going to estimate, you want to estimate high and assume that students from all of those neighborhoods are going to need transportation. So it has affected the number of buses and routes in doing that estimation, but you have to be careful not underestimate, because you could put yourself behind the 8 ball once school starts. So that's a lot of discussion about a very deep question there, but I hope I hit on most things.
One that we've gotten, Dr. Milliman and I just today fielded some questions about that. Another one I get is, well, those half-full buses, we'll just double those buses up so that frees up a whole bus. It's not as easy as that sounds. We have some moral minimums as a district as well. We don't want young children being on a bus for an hour and 15 minutes just to reduce buses that we have to use. There are some age-appropriate minimums that we have as well. Certainly we can do some of those things, but I personally don't want my kindergartner on the bus for an hour, 15 minutes just to reduce that size of the bus. Joe Licata oversees transportation, and they are working on efficiency analysis and review for the entire division of transportation. This isn't something new. That is something that they do ongoing. So certainly this year with routing, they will take a stab at that as well. In order to get the options in front of you, they have to take a glance at this, and it's more than just, oh yeah, those times look pretty good. They run some example routing to make sure that these options that we put out for input are even possible within our system and won't cost significant amounts of money more. Once the board approves student hours, however, that's when they dive into the months and months and months of routing that occurs. That's when the efficiencies can come through, when they do that detailed analysis of the routing once the board hours are approved, and Mr. Licata has already charged the Department of Transportation for doing that.
Thank you very much. Very helpful, I think, to understand some of the aspects of the complexity of it. And certainly while
I'm happy to report I don't understand most of those. I just know it's really, really complex.
Why we need to keep those staff members.
That's right.
It is certainly a reality, and there are many realities in there that have to be worked with. And certainly it's a big enough puzzle that even though you might be able to find an efficiency here or there, that impacts other parts of the puzzle, so it's a difficult reality to work with, but one that needs to be addressed, and I'm glad you're continually working on that with staff, Mr. Licata. Any other questions, Board, about the student hours update and the, at this point in time, anticipated decision that we would make on that at our second meeting in February? Thank you very much. You're welcome. At this point, we would move on to the teacher hours update. And Dr. Milliman's
I'm standing in as well.
Thank you.
For that, Dr. Woodson already touched on some of the points as we were addressing Mr. Spanrotti's question. But we have continued our discussions with WTEA through the task force, which is laid out in our current collective bargaining agreement. As Dr. Woodson pointed out, in Indiana Code now, teacher hours in their day is a subject of discussion moving forward, not a bargain item, so that is why that hasn't been, we'll call it a public discussion. We have had that with our staff. Our current discussions is centered on how additional time beyond the current 7-hour and 30-minute teacher day can be used to benefit both teachers and students in our schools. And with your support of our current teacher day, we have been using we'll call it a short-term option and providing some additional collaboration time for our teachers, and we've been discussing how we can use that additional time to continue our work. Lately, we've talked about the work of developing IB curriculum, professional development, common planning time, meeting of professional learning communities, and in layman's terms, that would be data teams, we'll call it, maybe, in the world of business. That would be the translation. Curriculum development, meeting needs of students, perhaps in small group settings or in tutorial settings. Parent communications, there's many things that we can do to support our student needs with that additional time. On January 17th, the administration shared a draft of teacher hours with that task force that, again, did lengthen the current teacher day and looked at some options around that. We met again on the 23rd. We'll meet again tomorrow afternoon to continue that conversation, and we'll be talking about prep time during the day as it might be affected with student hours, talking about the definition of prep time and creativity of the use of that time with principals and flexing that before and after depending on the team needs that may exist in the unique configurations of middle school, high school, and elementary. So that is an ongoing conversation, and as you pointed out earlier, it is tied to the student hour piece, and because of that, we do anticipate bringing that recommendation along with student hours to you for approval at the February 22nd meeting as well.
We have offered the Teachers Association any opportunity that they would like to put on the calendar for additional collaboration. Obviously, Dr. Milliman explained that we have some currently scheduled collaborations with the Teachers Association, but we've extended the opportunity after the discussion Saturday for any additional collaborations that they feel may be necessary so that we can meet that February 22nd recommendation to the board.
Questions, board? I think sometimes it's hard when we're as involved as the board is in understanding the efforts of staff and what we're working on. I think sometimes maybe the public doesn't know or may not be as aware of all the things that have changed since teacher hours were last, or the original hours were set as a part of bargaining. There's been any number of initiatives that we are looking at as a district or using, professional learning communities, the use of data intensively in guiding and improving instruction for all teachers, the International Baccalaureate inquiry method, everything that comes with that. And am I leaving out a couple more?
Probably, yes, but there's a lot of things going on, yes.
To use here in the district. And I think it's just important that we remind folks that we're just not looking to expand staff work days just because we can, but because there are any number of initiatives the district has taken on in an effort to be more effective and to improve our efforts to educate students here in Washington Township. And I think it's important that we keep reminding folks of that. And that the other important issue, I think, is that how this really is so different now is that state law has changed, and whereas in the past staff could be assured that when their hours were being discussed, they were at the table and had an opportunity to also negotiate compensation. And the new state law passed by the General Assembly last year now makes hours a discussable item, but it may not be negotiated. And that, if I was on staff, would give me pause as well. It's a big change in the relationship, and that is something that I'm glad Dr. Woodson, you and staff are, I know, very sensitive to, and working diligently with our staff, teaching staff here in Washington Township, so that we can continue to maintain an environment where people want to come here to work. They want to teach in this district because we respect and compensate our teachers well and appropriately for the good work that they do. And so I think it's just important that we continue to share that message with the general public as well. No other questions? Thank you, Dr. Milliman, for your update on the teacher hours update and our continued review and potential decision on that matter in February likely as well. With that, we move on to our final item on this regular board meeting agenda, and that is the board discussion and liaison reports. Would anybody like to volunteer to go first this evening?
I'll go.
Mr. Turner.
As the parent council liaison, parent council met last Wednesday on the 18th, and the plan for that particular parent council meeting was to have either Dr. Bennett or someone from his office at the Department of Education to come and talk about different legislation that's out there for this session, as well as things that are going before the state board. And we also had Dr. Vic Smith, who's a retired educator, who's really a public school advocate. So we kind of had a counterpoint meeting set up. I don't know the information, but the only person that showed up was Dr. Vic Smith that came that evening. So really we heard that particular side of the issues. And mainly, and the only reason I bring this up for those that weren't there, Mr. Kite was there, but and of course Dr. Whitson. Most of the time, he went over several things that were the pending legislation for this particular session. But he also talked about, and he's really an advocate for school, and he attends all these sessions and different committee meetings and everything else. But he talked about the grading system that's in front of the state school board and how the way they have it currently set up, and I don't know if they've made the changes for this next meeting they have, but he didn't believe, and he gave us examples of how it may not be fair for schools, and there's ways that schools could be unfairly graded incorrectly and then be set up for takeover later by the state after, I think it's 4 years now, and I could be wrong on that particular number, but it was very interesting. I just want to say, I'm not going to go into all the details. It was very interesting. There's a lot of legislation out there that I think anyone who is concerned about public education or have students in our district even should pay attention to. I think, I can't say, and what I really appreciate about a school board, and I'm glad the legislation didn't get their hands on this, the legislators didn't. The school board is a nonpartisan group. I think that is the way it should be, because I think when you start talking about ideology, your beliefs, I think that kind of can skew how you think about the public in general. So I really appreciate the fact that we're elected based off of being interested in public schools and not what party we belong to. So that's kind of a side note. But I thought it was a great meeting, and unfortunately we didn't get to hear the other side, is all that I would bring up.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Kite?
Yeah, the only thing I was curious about, I know Parent Council is not a governmental entity, but they couldn't impose a voluntary fine on the folks that didn't show up, because that's a no anyway. But the thing that I thought was, I had a couple of opportunities this week that I really enjoyed. The task force meeting, the last task force meeting was great. I thought very well done. A lot of good input. It seemed like
the advisory council.
Advisory council. Thank you. I'm always saying task force. That's going to I'm going to take that with me.
Were they proficient or progressive?
They were exemplary, I thought, personally. But
That's an inside joke.
Yeah.
For everybody.
But I also enjoyed, and I saw Mr. Desmoiner there, as well as Dr. Woodson, Mr. Quant's retirement celebration. Wonderful to be able to talk about real, solid indicia of a wonderfully spent career and work life, and yet to have elements and aspects of a roast as well, as you can only do for Mr. Quant. I still have my bandana. I didn't wear it that evening, but I have it now. So that's it. Just enjoy that.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Mrs. Bernardi?
I just went to a meeting at the request of my son that starting Super Bowl Sunday, we'll be hosting a Chinese student for a week in our homes. And so we're kind of excited about having someone from a completely different country and culture spend time with our two little puppies and our little dogs. It's unusual for them, is what I understand, to have animals in the house. So it'll be fun.
Ms. Harris?
I also enjoyed Mr. Quant's reception a great deal, and the comments, very thoughtful, very touching. And I think the only other thing I've mentioned before, working on this project with the State Bar on the civil rights of children, and the project that they're developing right now is going to involve distributing information about sort of what children should know before they make a plea in court. They've also been working on representation for children in juvenile court, but they will be particularly reaching out to educators with information to share because I think it's important for educators and children to understand what the consequences are of a guilty plea, particularly in Indiana juvenile court. There's not always representation before waiving the right to an attorney, and so and there are kids in the Department of Correction that have had basically they're trying to do a spread education about consequences of the additional impacts that can happen when kids are turned over to the police, basically. So it's interesting work, and when we have proper product, I'll be happy to share it.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I would just like to share that Dr. Whitson and I did attend the 2012 IUSA, Indiana Urban Schools Association, legislative luncheon and that annual meeting or regular meeting of the IUSA. I had an opportunity to speak with Representative Noe, Representative Delaney, and Representative Porter, who all shared lunch with us and had some good discussion about a variety of education and other General Assembly topics. Each of you has a copy of the IUSA's adopted legislative agenda, which I think has 7 very important and timely points that will be made by that organization and our district as a member with members of the General Assembly. So share that with you, and would encourage us to share that with Parent Council. I know, I'm sure, based on Mr. Turner's presentation, that that's something they are aware of, but this should be some additional information to share with them. Would encourage members of our community to again be active in communicating with their state representatives and their state senator, to share with them your thoughts on public education, your feelings, the public's feelings about Washington Township schools, and the importance to ensure that we are fully funded and have the autonomy to make the decisions that our constituents elect us as a board to make. Also attended the Indiana School Board Association leadership meeting, again with Dr. Woodson last week. Included several very, again, timely and relevant topics. One, a presentation by DOE on their new teacher evaluation model, required again by new legislation, new laws from last session. It will be a big change, and I know Dr. Woodson and her staff are working very hard with the Washington Township Education Association in creating an evaluation system for our district that meets our needs, the needs of developing our staff, while also meeting the new requirements of law. With that, I would just like to again share that at the conclusion of our regular meeting, the board will have a brief break and then reassemble for a study special session at which we will hear division reports. That meeting is also open to the public. There will be no action, no votes taken by the board at that meeting, but feel free to stay, any members of the public, and staff will try to get through that quickly and get you home this evening. If there are no other items for discussion by the board, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this regular meeting before we reconvene our study special session.
And we adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.